The cold wind blew through the early morning streets of New Terra 6, a human colony far away from Earth. James Walker rubbed his eyes and stepped out of his apartment. He was expecting a small delivery of smart pet he ordered late last night. After reading some strange but exciting online reviews, the ad said, "A smart pet like no other, interactive, lifelike, obedient." It had no company name, no contact number. But James was lonely, and the price was cheap. He didn't think too much. He looked around and found a long black box sitting at the edge of his doorstep. No labels, no symbols, just a soft, glowing light from one corner of the box. That's odd, he thought. James crouched down and touched. The surface, it was warm, almost like skin. He pulled the box inside quickly, unsure if his neighbors were watching. Something about it made him nervous. He didn't understand why. Maybe it was the silence. The stillness. With a small screwdriver, he pried the lid open. A soft hiss escaped, like the box was releasing air. Inside, wrapped in a smooth silver cloth, was a girl, not just any girl. She had long, violet hair, glowing purple markings on her skin, and small, pointed ears. Her body was curled up tightly, like a child sleeping. A collar blinked gently around her neck with a soft red light. She looked like she wasn't breathing. James stepped back. His heart started pounding. Alice wasn't a smart pet. This was a person. An alien girl. She suddenly stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, bright blue, shining like ice. She looked up at him with fear, then confusion. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. James raised his hands. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She blinked and tried to sit up, but her arms were shaking. She seemed weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. James didn't know what to do. He had ordered a pet something digital, maybe a small bot or even a robotic cat. But this was alive. The collar around her neck beeped softly. A small display appeared in the air, bonding in progress. Primary owner detected. James Walker. "What the hell?" he whispered. The girl crawled forward, her eyes locked on him like she recognized something. She didn't seem angry or dangerous. She looked lost, broken, like she had nowhere else to go. James helped her up and guided her to the couch. She followed his lead without resistance. She looked around the room like she had never seen a home before. She touched the couch fabric like it was a treasure. James brought her a glass of water. She sniffed it first, then drank it slowly. Her movements were careful, gentle, almost programmed. But her eyes were too real. He sat down across from her, still confused. "Can you understand me?" The girl tilted her head, then nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, in a soft, shaky voice. "Who are you?" She pointed to the collar on her neck. "No name. Property." James felt sick to his stomach. What had he brought into his home? The girl looked down, pulling her knees close to her. "Chest. Do you? Keep me." He didn't know what to say. This wasn't a pet. This was a person created, sold, and shipped like a product. Suddenly, his tablet beeped. A new message popped up. "Thank you for purchasing our exclusive beta series. Companion unit. We hope she brings you joy and obedience. All sales final." There was no sender. James looked at the girl. She stared at him, waiting. Her collar blinked again. It seemed to track her breathing, her heart rate. Maybe more. She didn't move unless he did. She didn't speak unless he spoke. It was like she was made to follow. He stood up, unsure of what to do next. Was she safe? Was he? She reached forward and touched his hand gently. "Please, don't return me." James stared at her. That one sentence hit him like a punch. Not because of the words, but because of how she said them. like she had been returned before. Again and again. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not sending you anywhere." The girl's eyes shimmered with relief. James didn't know what this was. A mistake? A trap? A science experiment gone wrong? But something deep inside him knew this girl needed help. And somehow, he was the only one who could give it. James woke up to the sound of soft footsteps on the metal floor. At first, he thought it was a dream. But when he opened his eyes, she was there kneeling beside his bed, watching him. The alien girl didn't speak. She just sat still, waiting for his next move. "Do you sleep?" James asked, rubbing his eyes. "I rest only when you do," she replied softly. That made his stomach twist. It wasn't right. She acted like a trained animal, obedient, silent, waiting for commands. But her eyes were too alive. Too human. James got up and walked to the kitchen. The girl followed, never more than 3 steps behind. She studied every movement he made. When he picked up a spoon, she did the same. When he sat, she sat. It was like she was learning, copying, but also surviving. He handed her a protein bar. She didn't tear the wrapper. Instead, she held it in both hands and stared. "You've never eaten this before?" he asked. She shook her head. He opened it for her. She took a small bite. Her expression changed as if taste was something new, something she had never been allowed to feel. Then she smiled. That smile made James feel something strange in his chest. She was beautiful, but not in a romantic way. It's in a tragic way, like someone who had never been free. Later that day, James connected the collar to his repair tablet. He wanted to see if there was any information, any way to find out where she came from. As soon as the tablet connected, it flashed red. Restricted. ACCSS classified files locked level 7 authorization required genetic unit. Beta Fem / status. Bonded primary owner. James Walker. "What the hell is this?" James whispered. This wasn't a toy. It wasn't even a robot. It was a classified biological unit, likely illegal. The girl watched his face. "You want to return me?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "But I need to understand what you are." She hesitated. Then she pointed to herself. Created, grown, programmed to obey. Her voice shook as she spoke. Like saying the words brought back pain. "I was never supposed to feel, but I do." James leaned closer. "They told you not to feel." She nodded. "Pain, fear, cold allowed. Joy, choice, freedom denied." He sat in silence. The world outside his door felt far away. She had been made in a lab, like a machine, but she wasn't one. Not anymore. He looked at the collar again. It had a blinking light that changed color based on her distance from him. A warning system, a tracker, maybe even a punishment tool. What happens if I take the collar off? Her eyes widened in fear. If removed by unauthorized system, may reset, I will forget. James froze. If he took off the collar, he could lose her mind, her memories, her soul. She would go back to being a blank unit, so he didn't touch it. Instead, he decided to test something. "You don't have to follow me," he said. "You can do what you want." The girl blinked, confused. I said, "Go explore. Look around." She stood still for a moment, then, slowly, walked to the window. She touched the glass, staring out at the colony buildings, the dusty street, the sky above. Then she whispered something so quiet, James almost didn't hear. So big, so free. Her voice cracked on the last word. James swallowed hard. This wasn't a pet, not even close. She was a prisoner, wrapped in soft skin and artificial obedience. And someone had sent her to him. But why? That night, she slept curled up on the floor next to his bed. James offered her the couch, a blanket, anything. But she insisted on staying close. "In case you need me," she said. "I don't want a servant," James replied. She looked up at him. "Then, what do you want?" He didn't have an answer, but he knew this: he had to protect her. Because somewhere out there, someone was probably looking for her. And if they found her, she might not get a second chance at being free. Not just a pet. It's not just a girl. Something more. Rain poured outside, soft and steady against the metal walls of the colony apartment. Inside, the room was silent except for the gentle hum of James's tablet and the quiet breathing of the alien girl who now called his home her own. She sat, cross-legged on the floor, studying a plant he had on the windowsill. It was nothing special, just a simple green sprout, but the way she stared at it, her head tilting slowly, her fingers barely brushing its leaves, made it look sacred. James watched her from the kitchen. 3 days had passed since she arrived. And still, he didn't know her name. He had tried asking. She had only answered, "I was never given one." That answer made something ache in him, a living being without a name, without an identity. "Then I'll call you Nira," James said one morning. She blinked, eyes wide. Then smiled, truly smiled for the first time. "Nira," she whispered. "Mine?" James nodded. "Yours?" That small word changed everything from that moment. She started to become more than a shadow. She began to explore the apartment on her own, gently touching objects like a curious child, asking quiet questions in broken English. "What this do? Why is soft? This food?" James answered. "Them all." And each time he did, her eyes glowed a little brighter. It wasn't just learning. It was freedom. Maybe the first she ever had. But even as she opened up, strange things continued to happen. James noticed how every time he left the room, her collar pulsed. Once, he saw her wince when she walked too far from him. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there. Like an invisible leash, he tried to disable the collar using his tools, but the device's code was too complex. Alien tech, military grade, dangerous. One wrong command could wipe her memory completely. Nira, meanwhile, started drawing strange symbols on scraps of paper. Circles, triangles, stars, but in patterns that didn't make sense to James. She would pause, stare at the drawing, then burn it quietly in the kitchen sink. One night, James found her curled up in the corner, whispering to herself in a language he couldn't understand. Her body shook, her hands gripping her arms. He knelt beside her. She didn't look at him. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She gasped, but didn't pull away. "I see fire," she said finally, voice trembling and cold. Hands, metal voices. "I was numbers, just numbers." James realized she was remembering, not like data, but trauma. "Was it a lab?" he asked softly. She nodded, tears falling silently. "They told me to obey. No think, no feel." James didn't know what to say. So he just sat beside her, letting her cry in silence. The next morning, something had changed. Nira woke up early and made James breakfast or tried to. The toast was burned, the eggs were raw, and she had somehow poured juice into the coffee pot. But when James tasted it, he smiled. "It's perfect." He said. Her cheeks flushed a soft purple, and she looked down, grinning. They began to speak more each day. Slowly, her English improved. And slowly, James began to learn her language. To just a few words at first. Safe, light, fear, home. That last word made her eyes shine. But it wasn't all peace. One afternoon, while Nira was reading, the tablet James had hidden beeped. A silent alert. Someone had tried to ping the caller's location. James froze. He turned off the signal, wiped the device, and checked the caller again. It was still transmitting quiet, but steady. Someone was still looking for her. He didn't tell Neera, not yet. Instead, he bought a signal jammer and placed it in the walls. If someone came for her, he would be ready. That night, as Neera sat on the floor drawing stars again, she looked up at him. "You stay," she said. James blinked. "Of course, why?" She hugged her knees. Others left. That single sentence told him more than any story could. She had been passed from one owner to the next. Bought, returned, traded. But it wasn't like the others. He walked over and sat beside her. "I won't leave you, Neera. Not ever." She looked into his eyes. "Even if I break." "You're not a thing to break," he said. "You're a person. And you're safe here." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Neera whispered, "James, I trust you." And that was the moment when the obedient pet became something more. A friend. A soul. A story no longer written by others. Late one evening, as the moonlight slipped through the blinds and cast silver patterns across the floor, James sat alone at his workbench. Neera was asleep on the couch, curled up under a blanket, breathing softly. She looked peaceful, almost normal. But James knew better. He stared at the collar in his hands, the second one, the backup unit. It secretly removed it from the box. Neera came in, hidden deep beneath the lining. It looked identical to the one she still wore, black metal, glowing red light. Smooth as bone, James placed it under his scanner. The screen blinked once, then went dark. Then lines of code began to spill across the screen, but it wasn't human programming. The characters shifted, changed, alive like flowing water. James narrowed his eyes and adjusted the settings. Slowly, words began to form. BetaFem X9. Directive, serve until null. Memory wipe enabled. Bond protocol, auto-link to first. Human contact. Warning, emotional drift detected. James leaned back. Emotional drift. That meant the collar wasn't just tracking Neerette, was measuring her feelings. She had never been free. Not really. Everything she felt was being watched, possibly controlled. He kept digging. Inside the code, hidden deep, was a second. Layer 1 that pulsed softly in red and was locked behind heavy encryption. It took him hours, but finally, it opened. And what he saw chilled his blood. Live feed, active recordings, 72 hours logged remote access, enabled status, unit under observation. Primary viewer, UN Canot slammed his hand on the table. Someone had been watching them, listening to every word. Watching Neera sleep, laugh, learn her smiles. Her pain had all been recorded. And worse, someone out there could see everything right now. He pulled the cable free, killing the connection. Then he turned toward the couch. But Neera was already awake, sitting up, staring at him. "You looked inside," she whispered. James nodded. "They've been watching you, watching us, since the beginning." She said nothing. "I didn't know, Neera. I swear." She stood slowly. "I believe you. But now you see, I was never mine." Her voice cracked on the last word. She looked down at her hands, shaking. "I remember flashes," she said. "Before you, cold lights, wires in my head. They tested my fear, my sadness, my hope, and every time I showed too much, they reset me." James stepped forward, heart pounding. "They won't reset you again." Neera's eyes glowed faintly, her alien markings pulsing like starlight. "You can't stop them. They made me to serve, to bond. And when I love, they erase it." James froze. "You Love. She looked up, panicked. Wasn't supposed to say that? I don't. I can't. He placed a hand on her shoulder gently. You can feel. That makes you real. Not their tool. But she backed away. If they know I'm feeling this, they'll come. They always do. As if summoned, James's scanner beeped again. A signal was pinging from orbit close, focused, directed at their apartment. He looked at the screen. It showed a live transmission. Trying to reconnect with the caller. They were coming. James grabbed his tools, quickly working to disable the transmitter inside her collar. But Neera shook her head violently. No, if you fail, I disappear. They'll wipe me clean. Everything. I am gone. James looked into her eyes, full of terror. I won't fail. She hesitated, then nodded. Her hands gripped the edge of the table as James carefully opened a panel in the collar. Sparks flew. The red glow flickered. A soft, robotic voice whispered. Tampering detected. Memory wipe protocol initiated. No. No, stay with me, Neera. James shouted. She gasped and dropped to her knees. Her hands trembled. James, she whispered. Please remember me. The light on the collar pulsed, then went out. Silence. Neera fell forward. James caught her before she hit the floor. Her eyes were closed, her body limp. He shook her. Come on. I stopped a tie. No, I did. And then, slowly, her fingers curled around his arm. Her eyes opened. James, she whispered. He smiled, breath shaking. You're still here. She blinked in confusion, then slowly smiled. You didn't let them take me. He hugged her tightly. No one's taking you. Not now. Not ever. But he knew the truth. They were still out there. And now, they would come for both of them. The sky above New Terra 6 turned dark not from the setting sun, but from the arrival of a silent ship that hovered high above the colony buildings. It had no lights, no markings, and no sound. But it watched. James didn't see it at first. He was too busy packing. He had already powered down his repair systems, wiped the tablet clean, and stashed emergency supplies into a small bag. Food, tools, a jammer, 2 cloaking blankets. He was ready to run. Nir stood in front of the mirror, staring at the now dead collar around her neck. It no longer glowed, no longer buzzed. But the scars it left, the ones no one could see, still lived inside her. James looked at her. We leave tonight. I found tunnels in the Undercity. No one tracks down there. Neera turned. They're already here. James paused. What? She walked toward the window and pointed at the sky. That ship. It's not colony law enforcement. It's them. The ones who made me. James rushed to the window. He saw it dark, still, like a shadow pressed against the clouds, watching. Waiting as if on cue, a knock echoed at the door. Not loud, not angry, just calm. James didn't move. Then a voice came through, low and filtered through a speaker. Unit X9, return requested. No harm will come to your host. Compliance will result in reward. James clenched his fists. They think I'm just a host. Like I volunteered for this. Neera didn't speak. She stood frozen, trembling. The voice came again. We are authorized to retrieve the prototype. You have 1 minute to comply. James walked to the panel by the door and slammed the emergency lock shut. Steel barriers covered the windows. Lights dimmed. Inside, it felt like a bunker. He turned to Neera. You don't belong to them anymore. Do you hear me? No more commands. No more control. Her voice cracked. But they'll take me. Not while I'm alive, James replied. She blinked, tears forming. Why? Why do you fight for me? He looked at her. Because you're worth it. Then the wall shook. Blast hit the outside of the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. Nira fell to her knees, covering her ears. It begins. James pulled her up and opened the hatch in the floor, one only he knew existed. A path to the old water tunnels below the colony. Let's go. Now. Slipped into the dark, leaving behind everything. As the hatch closed, another explosion shook the building. Lights flickered. Sirens screamed in the distance. Below ground, the tunnel smelled of rust and oil. Water dripped from the pipes above. The air was cold. James led with a light strapped to his wrist. Nira followed, barefoot and silent. Her long hair stuck to her back with sweat. "I used to hide down here," James said, "when I couldn't pay rent, or when I wanted to disappear." Nira touched the wall gently. "You're good at hiding." James gave a small laugh. "Not good enough. They found us." She looked up at him. "Then we run. Together." They moved through the maze of tunnels until they reached a larger chamber and old power station. It hadn't been used in years, but it was safe. For now, James set down the bag and gave Nira a ration bar. She chewed quietly, watching him. Then she asked, "Do you think I was made wrong?" He turned to her. "What?" "I feel too much," she whispered. "I cry. I dream. I want things. They say that's wrong." James knelt beside her. "They made you wrong on purpose. So that one day, someone like me would meet someone like you. Not a pet, not a machine, but someone real." Nira wiped her eyes. Then, from far behind them, a voice echoed down the tunnel. "Walker, this is your final warning." James grabbed the jammer and activated it. The sound died instantly. But so did their hope of escape. "They're already inside," Nira whispered. James turned off the light. "Then we don't run. We fight smart." Nira's body glowed faintly, her markings brighter than before. She looked stronger, sharper. "What are you doing?" James asked. "I was programmed to serve," she said. "But I was also designed to protect my bonded host." She stepped forward. "And for once, I choose to protect you." James stared as the girl who once cowered in corners now stood tall, glowing like a star in the dark. Not a pet, not a slave, not a product, but a force. The tunnels trembled behind them. Distant echoes of footsteps and the faint whir of scanners filled the stale air. But down in the shadows, James and Nira didn't stop moving. James held his pulse, blade tight, though it had little charge left. Nira walked beside him, now longer hiding behind him. Her faint glow guided their path like moonlight. Her eyes were focused. Her voice was calm, but James could see it, the fear behind her strength. She knew what would happen if they were caught. They wouldn't take her back to a lab. They'd erase her. Ahead, the tunnel forked. James paused. Left leads to the scrapyard. Right leads to the dead grid zone. Which one's safer? Nira asked. Neither. But the grid zone has no signal. They can't track us there. Then we go where their eyes can't follow. They turned right, deeper into darkness. As they moved, Nira stumbled. Her body shook for a moment, then steadied. The collar, though deactivated, still had remnants of neural code inside her spine. It was fading slowly, but it still hurt her. James helped her sit for a moment. "We'll rest here, just a bit." Nira leaned against the wall. "I can still feel them, whispering in my mind, commands, orders I no longer want to follow." "You're free now," James said. She looked up at him, weak but steady. "Freedom isn't just running, James. It's choosing to stand, even if you're afraid." James smiled. "Then we stand together." But rest was short. A strange buzzing filled the air. Nira's eyes widened. "Drones?" James looked up. A scouting drone slithered across the ceiling pipes. Maul. Spider-like. Silent. Hide, he whispered. But Nira grabbed his hand. No. Let me try something. She stepped into the open and stared up at the drone. The collar on her neck, though, broke and flickered once. The drone paused. Then it scanned her. Red light passed across her face. Suddenly, a soft tone played. Unit X9, command detected. Orders. James held his breath. Nira stood tall and answered with a word James didn't understand her native tongue. The drone blinked. Then powered down, dropping to the floor with a clank. James's eyes widened. You controlled it. I didn't control it, she said. I convinced it I was still theirs. You fooled their tech, he whispered. She nodded. A trick. It won't work twice, but it buys us time. James picked up the drone, placed it into his bag. We might need this later. They kept moving, deeper into the dead grid zone. Soon, everything was pitch black. Even Nira's glow dimmed, as if the air itself was pressing on them. James lit a glouse. Nick's casting pale green light along the wall. What is this place? Nira asked. An abandoned grid station, he replied. Old tech. Shut down years ago when the colony moved forward. But it's dead for a reason. They stepped inside the hollow ruins' broken panels. Dead wires hanging like vines. The floor littered with dust and memory. Then they heard it. Not footsteps, not drones. Breathing, James raised his weapon from the dark. A voice spoke. You're not the only ones hiding here. A figure stepped into the light. Human, beard, scars, dirty jacket. I've seen her kind before. The man said, nodding at Nira, but never one who looked. Awake, James stepped in front. She's not your problem. The man smiled. Didn't say she was. Just saying, I've been fighting those retrieval bastards for years. You look like you need help. James hesitated. And what do you want? The man's smile faded. Revenge? Same as you, I guess. Behind him, more figures appeared. A small rebel group, castes, hackers, ex-soldiers. Survivors of people like Nira's creators. Come with us, the man said. Or keep running alone. James looked at Nira. Your choice. She looked around, then back at James. I trust you. They nodded. Followed, and for the first time since the chase began. They weren't alone. Far above, inside the black ship, floating above the colony, a voice echoed through a control room. Subject X9 has escaped control. Human asset has compromised. Containment. Begin Phase 2. A figure in white turned from the screen. She was never meant to learn to love. Then we'll teach her why she shouldn't. In the heart of the old dead grid zone, Nira sat in silence. Around her, the rebel group prepared for war-charging weapons, tuning scanners, building shields from scrap metal and stolen tech. But she sat alone on the broken floor of the old control center, staring at her hands. They used to obey without question. Now they trembled. Not from fear, but from choice. James approached and knelt beside her. They're almost ready. Nira looked up, her violet eyes glowing faintly. Ready to fight for me. For someone who was born in a lab. Not for what you were born as, James said. For who you are now. She nodded slowly. And who am I? James gave a soft smile. Yes, you're Nira. You choose. You feel you matter. Her breath hitched, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. She stood, eyes fixed forward. Then it's time to stop running. Above them, the black retrieval ship began its descent. Lights flickered across its underbelly. Below, drones poured into the tunnels, red-eyed, emotionless. Behind them marched armored soldiers and white scientists with guns. Calm, cold, efficient. The Lead voice echoed down into the chamber through speakers. This is your final warning. Return the unit or be terminated. James stepped into the open with a pulse rifle. She's not a unit. Nira stepped beside him. No weapon. Just her. She's a person, James said. No, the voice replied. She is an experiment, broken and expendable. Nira's eyes flared with light. I am not broken, she said loudly. You just failed to control me. The soldiers raised their rifles. Lasers charged. Before they could fire, the rebels triggered the traps mines exploded. Drones fell from above, smoke filled the air. And in that chaos, Nira walked forward through the smoke. One of the drones scanned her. ID match, Beta Fems 9. Command. Nira tilted her head, whispered in her native tongue. The drone blinked, then turned on its masters. In seconds, half the drone force flipped. Lasers turned inward. The soldiers panicked. You reprogrammed them? James shouted, No. Nira said, I gave them freedom. One by one, more drones shut down or flew away. Without control signals, they drifted like lost children. But one soldier, wearing a higher-ranking badge, fired a beam directly at Nira. James jumped in front, took the blast in the shoulder. Nira, he groaned, falling. Her scream echoed through. The chamber not programmed, not controlled, but real. She dropped to her knees beside him. Stay with me, she begged. You can't leave me now. James coughed. I'm not going anywhere. The last wave of soldiers charged. But now, the rebels moved as one and Nira led them. With a scream that split the air. She raised her hand, and the markings on her skin blazed with power. It wasn't a weapon. It was her mind, unlocked. Her own. The lights in the chamber shattered. Walls cracked, and the enemy tech fried from the inside out. The battle ended in minutes. Silence fell. Dust hung in the air. Bodies lay on the floor, some drones. Some soldiers, none victorious. Nira stood in the middle of it all. Not a slave, not a pet, but someone who had chosen to fight for her life. She walked back to James and helped him sit up. Did we win? He whispered. No, she said softly. We survived. That's stronger than winning. He laughed weakly. Sounds like something a human would say. She smiled. Then maybe I've learned well. Days passed. The colony declared independence from the biotech corporation that had made Nira. The rebels gained more support. People began speaking openly about what had been done to others like her and Nira. She stood before a new council, tall, proud and unchained. I am not property, she said. I am not code. I am not an object to be owned. I am Nira. I choose who I am, and no collar will ever control me again. The chamber was silent. Then, applause. Real, human. For her. That night, James stood on the balcony of their small, new safe house. His shoulder was healing. The stars above looked clearer somehow. Nira stepped beside him, holding 2 mugs of tea. One for you, she said. One for me. He took the mug. Hot tea from a once-dead grid zone. Fancy. She smiled. Then, softly, she asked, Do you still see me as a pet? James shook his head. I see you as a survivor, a friend, maybe even something more. She leaned on his shoulder. Good, because I see you as the first human who saw me not as a thing, but as a person, and in the dark of space, far. Away from labs and wires, a girl once built to obey, now lived by her own will. Not a pet, not a tool. Not a number, just Nira.